Get on board the Bernier bus train. Come get on board the Bernier bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Oh, get on board the Bernier bus train. Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. We've got new poll data, and we have lots of ideas about what they all mean, all these data, and so we're going to jump right in with the Hill rising.
How are the candidates doing in New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina post-debate? Team Rising is here to give their assessment.
Neon B. Carter is an assistant professor of political science at Howard University and author of American While Black. And Henry Rogers is Capitol Hill reporter for The Daily Caller. Two great friends of the show.
Great
It's
to
good
see
to see
you
you.
guys.
Thanks for having us. Absolutely. Okay, so we got this interesting new Suffolk polls out of New Hampshire. Basically shows Bernie sitting at 16%, Warren at 14%, Buttigieg 13%, Biden at 12%.
Nice.
I mean, sitting in fourth place, and with
strong
Tulsi Gabbard slightly behind, sitting at 6%. That's not a good look for him. We were just talking about this.
Yeah, I think it's a great
Biden's really having a rough,
in the first two
couple
states,
days
it's a
here.
disaster.
It sounds like a real mess.
Yeah.
I will say that this is good polling for Bernie.
Yeah,
Bernie's obviously moving his way up in the polls, as far as I can tell, despite his kind of, in my opinion, not as strong debate performance last time compared to his other debates. I think he could have been more aggressive. But I do think that this poll is interesting in the sense that Biden is going down. I think that that's going to reflect in a lot of other polls that you see throughout the coming weeks.
They unpack a lot of these data, but I think the biggest point they make is that Biden is going down. So that's what I got from that one. Now, the Suffolk poll they mentioned is right here. Poll shows Sanders has the edge in New Hampshire as Buttigieg gains ground. Now, Buttigieg is the new anointee, so when all the, especially in the coverage of the debate, especially in the way the questions were handled, the way the whole debate format was handled, you could see that they had jumped on the Buttigieg bandwagon. And so the support from Elizabeth, the waffly support, the fickle support, the upper middle class white voters with well-educated voters, they aren't committed. They keep jumping around, and so they'll keep jumping around, I'm sure, because they're also never Bernie or any. I hope somebody else comes to save me from Bernie, but if not, I'll hold my nose and vote for Bernie. Those are the voters that keep jumping around, and so what we saw, I think, is that when the torch was passed by the media and by the political machinery to Buttigieg, we saw that Elizabeth was left high and dry again, just the way Hillary did to her. Oh, let's make some deals. Let's see what I can get for my career from you, Hillary. Oh, yeah, let's see. Let's go on here. Well, let's read a little bit about here. They say Deval Patrick jumped in too late. They say sticky, like Megan Day was saying, that Bernie supporters are with Bernie. Somebody said in a show yesterday, they said that Bernie, if he gets stuck in the impeachment hearings in the Senate and he can't be out on the campaign trail, and Elizabeth Warren is also stuck and can't be out on the campaign trail, what you're going to see is that Bernie's sticky supporters will stick with him, whether he's out on the trail or not, and Elizabeth Warren's won't. Voter resolve. So 53% say they could still change their minds. This is a big deal about stickiness, and so instead of just showing a snapshot in time and then a very different one in a few days, what they're saying is that there's a real difference between the kind of support that Sanders has versus Buttigieg and Warren. And Biden, for that matter. If you read this, 53 say they could change their minds, but most Democrats who favor Sanders 64% say their minds are made up, compared to 37% of Biden voters, 36% of Warren supporters, and 30% who prefer Buttigieg. Healthcare is a big deal. And Suffolk polls have a pretty good, with their polling procedures, they have a pretty good margin of error, a pretty low margin of error. Emerson polling, New Hampshire 2020. This is New Hampshire. This isn't just Emerson polling in general. Sanders jumps to the lead in New Hampshire. And you can see Buttigieg benefiting from both Biden and Warren tanking. That's the other news from these polls, is that Biden is definitely tanking. You can see that with David Sirota Morning Consult. I think that is I can't remember for sure if it was Morning Consult or if it is Suffolk that has a low margin of error. I know for sure that Morning Consult has the lowest margin of error of all these polls. And their new early state tracking poll not only shows Bernie close to Biden in the early states, but he shows that Biden is tanking. Biden has dropped 5 points since the last polls. Bernie has increased 9 points. 9 points. So what does that say? If you're trying to project the graph forward, 9 points is a huge jump. Everybody else is pretty stable. Yang also made a pretty good jump, but everyone else is either dropping or staying the same. But this 9-point jump, this is an amazing thing that we should be noticing as we interpret these data. So we've got Emerson and Suffolk and Morning Consult. Here is that Suffolk poll broken down in the early states. This is early states. So we've got 26% Biden, 23% Bernie, and everybody else behind them. And this is one harbinger, one signal. Another one, though, is Barack Obama coming out and woke shaming people, telling us not to expect too much. Hillary Clinton coming out and blaming people and not supporting progressive ideas, and then red scaring us. And other plutocrats coming into the race, Bloomberg and Deval Patrick coming into the race. These are signals, powerful signals. The next thing I'm looking for is David Brock to rear his ugly head, the operative that did the astroturfing before, that hired all of the Hillary bots to infiltrate social media. I'm expecting David Brock to rear his ugly head. I'm expecting John Cowan of Third Way and Neera Tanden of Center for American Progress. They're going to rear their ugly heads. The DNC, Tom Perez, he's been quiet. We haven't had much noise from him, but Tom Perez is going to be pushed by his donors to do something to stop Bernie. And so what we're going to see is the high-level machinery people. They're going to come out. We're going to see a flurry of Hollywood actors come out and either support whatever candidate they tell them to anoint. That's going to be interesting because last time all they had was Hillary. So all of these actors who should have known better and probably did, they did what their talent agencies said and supported Hillary. But if it isn't clear to the machine which candidate they should support, it'll be funny if we see the actors and actresses come out for one candidate and then when they're told to switch, then watch them all switch. I think that would be illustrative. I think you're going to see that switching happen. It's really confusing. They put all these candidates in the race to stop Bernie. Make no mistake. I've proven that in another forum on Medium. But so if they do that, if they throw all these candidates in to stop Bernie, they're also going to have to pick one, or they're going to look like it's just going to be so obvious to the whole world And the whole world is watching this election. Everybody in every country is aware of what's going on because of what it means for workers. I think workers especially are watching what happens here. And they get better news than we do. They know more about what's going on than we do in this country, because in this country there's a barricade for us to stop us from knowing what's going on. If there's a Bernie Sanders surge, you're not going to hear about it on CNN. You're not going to hear about it on MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times. You might hear it on Newsweek. So that's a tip. Pro tip. David Dole has done a good job with the new data. He went through, he's doing on his show here, which you should watch, what I'm doing on my show. He has all these different points to make. And so he just goes through his tabs and he just makes all the different points one after the other. And some of his ideas I've mentioned already. And so if you get a chance to go through here, I'll let you just see a snippet of this.
So, look, it's hard to quantify that stuff, but keeping that in mind when looking at any of these polls, in general, I think Bernie has stronger numbers than it actually appears in most polls. But with that said, he's close here to Joe Biden with 23%.
He just said that young people, and a lot of Bernie's base, is not likely to vote in the primaries, including young people, including poor and poorly educated people. So he's saying that Bernie's numbers are underrepresented potentially based on what would happen in a general election if you had a Sanders-Trump matchup.
Now, there's something else I want to share here based on that data point.
He just keeps going.
And that's the difference. So,
yeah.
If I bring this a little over here.
There's the...
So in the early states...
I already showed you that one. Let me jump to some of his other points here just so you can see where he's headed.
In that debate, as he's the one here who jumped the most in support. But we're not done. Let me scroll down to a bit of this here. So this is just tracking over time. This is so the national polling. So you see Biden here, kind of staying the same a lot, but he's going down more recently. Warren is dropping off a lot, and Bernie is going up while Biden's coming down. Now, if you are guessing that, hey, are some of Biden's second choice, or are some of Biden's supporters, is their second choice Bernie Sanders? You would be correct. So looking at second choice, or second choices here, Biden supporters, second choice.
This is really useful as he traces one person's gain as another person's loss is pretty much what he's showing. And he goes through, and the real reason for me to show you this is to show you that you should watch the whole thing because his insights are really good, one after the other. He has one good insight after the other that you're not going to get on corporate media. So I'll link to David in the information section. Also, David mentions, will you be able to vote for Bernie? If we can wake people up that traditionally don't vote in primaries, the number of people who vote in primaries is very low. In recent elections, voter turnout for primaries has been abysmal. Many states had fewer than 10% of eligible voters participate, compared to around 60% in the general election. So anybody who votes, especially in a swing state, in the primaries, has a compounding factor. Your vote matters a lot more in a primary than it does in the general, just because of the low turnout. Primaries are between candidates of the same party, if you didn't know, and unlike in the general election, the winner is nominated by the Democratic Party to go head-to-head against the winner of the Republican Party. So unless you get out there and vote in the primaries, you're stuck with whoever the corrupt DNC wants you to vote for. It's up to us to get this information in front of people who would not normally vote. And then it shows the schedule. There are closed primaries, open primaries, closed and open caucuses, and others. And if you can just go to your state and you can figure out when you need to get registered by and when the voting is. So this is all really useful to put in front of people who have traditionally not voted in primaries. If there are people in your workplace or in your neighborhood or in your church or anywhere else you frequent who haven't voted, who haven't ever voted in primaries, this is the time, if there ever was a time, this is the time to get them going. And so I'll link to this too. Media coverage of Bernie Sanders leverage the idea that Bernie or bust could, it didn't last time, but Bernie or bust could have made it impossible for any Democrat, any corporate Democrat, and the only one we had was Hillary, could have made it impossible for Hillary to win the general election. And it was close. In the swing states especially, it was close. But what we don't know, what people will not hear unless we tell them, is that the Bernie or Trump voters, the people who doubled their leverage by not only not voting for the Democrat candidate, but voting directly for the Republican, made the difference. They can claim with data that they caused Hillary Clinton's defeat. And there are even more Bernie or Trump voters this time. And these data are out there. We can look at what happened last time, and we can look at voter preferences this time. There are more than enough Bernie or Trump voters, and we're not advocating that anyone be a Bernie or Trump voter, but they're like a force of nature. They're like a whirlwind, and you can't change their minds. You can't stop them. They're just out there. It's just a fact. And so you're not going to hear that anywhere. There are already more than enough Bernie or Trump voters, especially in swing states, to ensure that Elizabeth Warren will not win in the general election against Donald Trump. Pete Buttigieg will not win in the general election against Donald Trump. Joe Biden absolutely will not win. And what you'll realize then, because the corporate powers already know this, they already know that there are enough Bernie or Trump voters to scuttle it. They don't want you to know that, but they know that. But what they also don't want you to know is that they're happy if Trump keeps going, far more than they would be if Bernie became president. They're much happier with the Trump presidency because Trump is a closeted, fascistic neoliberal. He's a neoliberal like Barack Obama, like Bill Clinton, like George W. Bush, like Ronald Reagan. He's a neoliberal who's openly racist, who's openly fascistic. He doesn't signal. He actually does signal in some ways. He was a Democrat. He's not that different from the other neoliberals we've had. He's heinous. He's horrible. But the corporate powers are still much, much happier with a Donald Trump presidency than a Bernie Sanders presidency. They don't want you to know that. They don't care. But you care. If you want Donald Trump to be defeated, then you won't hear it from corporate news that it's already too late unless you unite behind Bernie. It's not posturing. It's not being petulant. It's not being juvenile. It's being grown up enough to realize that there just aren't the votes that a corporate candidate will need to defeat Donald Trump in the general election. The swing states especially are going to have Bernie or Trump voters jumping up and saying, not on my watch. You're going to have Trump again because you cheated Bernie, and they're already trying to cheat Bernie. If you look at the media, the way the media covers Bernie, this is the message that we have to get out. And so you can go to this page. I'll link to this page, Revolt Against Plutocracy, and all the pretty much what I just unpacked here about why it's going to be impossible for anyone other than Bernie Sanders to win in the general election. Here are some comments from subscribers to the Bernie or Bust television channel. We got new subscribers, and here is Michigan Go One, a comment. I'll vote for whoever gets the nomination, but I hope you angry Bernie fans back whoever wins and don't throw a wrench into the election. Because I was talking about Megan Day and saying what she's been saying, she kind of dances around the idea of leverage a little bit. And so whoever this is realizing that the truth is that angry Bernie fans are also in swing states. They're also hurting economically. The comfortable Democrats are waving their hands in despair, saying, "Hey, you angry Bernie fans, you need to wise up." It's not going to happen. It absolutely is not going to happen. You're not going to talk sense. You might talk sense into Bernie or bust people against Donald Trump, but the Bernie or Trump people, the double leverage people, you're not gonna wake them up. You're not gonna move them out of their path of destruction. It's a foregone conclusion. And so, if you're watching this show, Mitch Go One, it's too late. Trump is a foregone conclusion unless we all unite behind Bernie. It's just facts, Jack. So with that happy note, I mean, it's frustrating to anybody who would never vote for Donald Trump, but we've got to deal with it. We've got to get this word out. We've got to sound the alarm. Paul Revere-like, we have to ride from town to town, workplace to workplace. We have to tell people, wake up. If you don't want Donald Trump, there's only one possible way out. You've heard it here before. You'll hear it here again. Keep on burning.
Get on board the Bernie bus train. Come get on board.